Education is essential for societal growth. It empowers people to contribute meaningful actions and opportunities for the improvement of themselves and others around them. Part and parcel of maintaining quality education is educational research, which is a systematic way to investigate and solve problems in education. There are two general types of research: quantitative and qualitative. There are numerous differences between the two. To make it simple, quantitative research is number-based, less in-depth, but has more breadth due to a bigger number of respondents involved. On the other hand, qualitative research is text-based, involves fewer participants, but is more in-depth. In this video, we will explore one method of qualitative research that is comparative, iterative, and interactive in terms of data collection, analysis, and interpretation. And that method is the grounded theory research.
Leedy and Ormerod defined grounded theory as a method of research where a theory emerges from data collected rather than taken from related literature. According to Bryant, it is a method that puts emphasis on the perceptions of the researchers in the research process. It regards the values and understanding of the researcher as essential elements in theory generation. Creswell added that it is a method of research where the researcher attempts to derive a general, abstract theory of a process, action, or interaction grounded in the views of participants in the study. Charmas and Smith reiterated that the grounded theory research is a constant comparative method of research that repeatedly collects and analyzes data obtained from interviews, reviews, and observations. On the other hand, Opie discussed that the grounded theory research involves the collection and analysis of qualitative data to explain a phenomenon. According to Lawrence and Tarr, compared with other research methodologies, grounded theory is a systematic and holistic way to construct new perspectives about a phenomenon. Analyzing data begins with basic describing, conceptual ordering, and ends with theory forming. Glasser and Strauss characterized grounded theory research as the following. First, collecting and analyzing data simultaneously. Second, developing codes and categories from data rather from preconceived hypotheses. Third, constructing theory to explain phenomena. Fourth, writing of notes to explicate categories. Next is comparing data with data, data with concept, and concept with concept. And the last one is conducting literature review after data analysis. Creswell similarly listed the major characteristics of grounded theory research, which are as follows. First, it observes the processes of interactions and outcomes among people in the phenomenon. Second, it documents data through memo-writing or the recording of concepts and ideas throughout the study. Third, it employs theoretical sampling, which directs the researchers to the most important data from ongoing coding, comparing, and grouping. Fourth, it involves constant comparison of data to derive with commonalities and variations. Next, it emerges the core category that reflects the main theme of the study, and last, it produces a theory that explains the phenomenon.
Simply put, grounded means that the theory will be grounded from the data. Theory development starts and ends with the data. But how could we know that a research study follows the grounded theory method? What are the steps that we should follow when trying to conduct this type of research? And who are the pioneers of this type of research?
The grounded theory method arose through the efforts of Barney G. Glasser and Anselm L. Strauss in the 1960s. Since they were involved on social sciences research in hospitals on death awareness, they established a research design that attempts to produce a new theory rather than verify existing ones. In their book The Discovery of Grounded Theory, Glasser and Strauss emphasized the positivistic and interpretative elements of this method.
Over the years, grounded theory research became one of the most popular methods in qualitative research. To successfully utilize this method, its nature and paradigm must be fully understood.
Creswell enumerated 8 steps in conducting the grounded theory research: design, plan, seek, collect, code, develop, validate, and write. First is to decide whether the grounded theory method is applicable to the research problem. The grounded theory method is used when the aim of the study is to create a new theory or improve an existing one. Second is to plan a feasible process or phenomenon to study. Third is to seek approval and access. Agreement between participants must be fostered before data collection. Fourth is to collect data using theoretical sampling. To attain in-depth data, data collection must be continuously done. Differences must be determined to saturate and refine data. Fifth is to code the data. This process allows the grouping of data based on similarities to form categories. Next is to use selective coding and develop the theory. Relationships between categories must be formed to come up with narrative descriptions. Then, the emerging theory must be validated. Data must be checked against categories and the constructed theory must be compared with existing ones. The last step is to write a grounded theory report. The problem statement, methods, discussion, findings, conclusion, and recommendations must be included. The 3 most dominant grounded theory designs are the systematic design, emerging design, and constructivist design. The systematic design consists of the following stages: open coding, actual coding, and selective coding. Open coding involves the construction of initial categories from collected data. First, important ideas must be identified, then classified to corresponding categories. Actual coding involves the establishment of the relationships of major categories and its subcategories. Categories must be related using its causal conditions, resolving strategies, environmental factors, and outcomes. Selective coding involves theory generation by interpreting the relationships of categories. It uses the most important variables to create a theory that aids the investigation of factors affecting a phenomenon and strategies leading to specific outcomes. A sample study using the systematic grounded theory design is SPIN's doing grounded theory research with gifted students in 2003. The 16 participants were selected using purposive sampling. Participants were 16 gifted students who were found to be dissatisfied with the pace of the regular classroom. Data were collected using semi-structured interviews, classroom observations, conversations with teachers, and maps drawn by the participants. In open coding, three main categories, namely school and classroom structure weighting, instructional weighting, and assignment weighting, plus 15 subcategories were formed. In actual coding, relationships between the categories were formed using the components, namely phenomenon, causal conditions, context, intervening conditions, action or interaction strategies, and consequences. In selective coding, a core category emerged in the form of the statement, "Weighting is boring, sometimes weighting is fair." Finally, a theory is generated with the following propositions: already knowing, adjusted doing, and being fair. In contrast with the systematic design, the emerging design values data collection itself than describing preset categories. In this design, a theory is constructed using the relationships of categories but without referring to a diagram or stages. A sample study using the emerging grounded theory design is Larson's Social Studies teacher's conceptions of discussion, a grounded theory study in 1997. This study aimed to develop an explanation about the conception of high school teachers on classroom discussion. The participants are 6 high school social studies teachers who were purposefully selected for this study. Data were collected using in-depth interviews and think-aloud tasks. Data collected were examined to develop categories. Categories were reduced and compared with each other until a final theory emerged about the process of classroom discussion. 6 conceptions about discussion emerged, namely recitation, teacher-directed conversation, open-ended conversation, a series of challenging questions, guided transfer of knowledge to the world outside the classroom, and practice at verbal interaction. The constructivist design emphasizes the values, beliefs, principles, opinions, expectations, and philosophy of the researchers while interacting with the participants of the study. A sample study using the constructivist design is Macmillan's End of Life Decisions, Nurses' Perceptions, Feelings, and Experiences in 2008. 8 intensive care unit nurses were purposefully selected to be the participants of this study. Data were collected using semi-structured interviews. Data collection and analysis revolved around 2 questions, namely, what roles do nurses play and how does this affect them? 2 major themes emerged. First, the nurse's role. Experience counts, not really a nurse's decision. Planting the seed, supporting the family, and being a patient advocate. Second, perceptions of the withdrawal of treatment, getting the timing right, and emotional labor.
Data collection and analysis are crucial for theory development. These processes are concurrently done all throughout the study. Data collection may be in the form of interviews, observations, focus group discussion, and documents. On the other hand, data analysis deals with organizing, reducing, coding, and sampling data until a final theory is derived. Despite the significance of grounded theory in the field of research, it still has some limitations that should be taken into account.
In the grounded theory method, the researcher plays an active role in building the framework for the study. To avoid any ethical issues, the American Educational Research Association suggested the following. First, avoid exploitations of the participants for private gain. Second, avoid forcing participants to be involved in the study. Third, consider individual differences of participants. Fourth, avoid harmful research techniques. Fifth is to consider organizational activities of the participants. And the last one is to report research findings. Can added the following suggestions. Assign pseudonyms for participants in transcribing interviews, and secure and store data in a safe place. On the other hand, BITS recommended that the researchers must first invest sufficient time in the study. Second, conduct in-depth data collection. Third, collaborate with individuals. Fourth, refine hypotheses. Fifth is avoid bias. Next is to validate data. And last is to perform triangulation to enhance findings. In Babchuk's point of view, grounded theory research may reduce subjectivism when collaboration between the researcher and the participants is present all throughout the process. The researcher may clarify results of the study with the participants to promote internal triangulation. The traditional linear format composed of literature review, findings, and discussion might not be applicable in grounded theory research. Because of this, Dunn suggested that researchers should be flexible in presenting their findings as long as it is suited to the nature of their studies. Another risk is constructing a theory based on existing literature rather than collected data from actual phenomenon. To avoid this, Golding suggested to begin the research process with data collection. The greatest danger in conducting grounded theory research is when a solid theory failed to emerge after data collection, analysis, and interpretation. Due to the subjectivity that may be manifested in the research process, Sharma suggested that the researcher must always portray an intersubjective attitude in which the fulfillment of roles are clear and direct. To evaluate a grounded theory research, Lincoln and Guba suggested a criteria that includes credibility or the accuracy of data, transferability or the applicability of findings to other studies, dependability or the degree that data represents changing phenomena, and confirmability or the objectivity of the researchers. Strauss and Corbin added that in evaluating a grounded theory research, the following must be examined: population and sampling, forming of categories, relationship of events to categories, theoretical sampling procedure, forming of hypothesis, and selection of core category.
So, thinking of studying about complex social phenomena? Then, grounded theory got ya. This is Clevin R. Pabriaga. Thank you for watching.